Good morning, YouTube. JT Serenity Farms prepping here. 7 a.m. just barely got light. Done the chores, done the greenhouse, done the morning watch. Unsuccessful. But we're too close to the election for me not to bring up something I remember hearing Pedo Joe specifically mention in the last debate. Have you heard the words dark winter? Yeah, he specifically brought it up when asked by liberal hack Welker about a supposed poll that showed 40% of Americans weren't really willing to get a vaccine, and what would he do to convince folks that it was safe and okay to get an injection. And through the use of several voice language interpreters, it appears that Joey said he would use science and facts and make sure the American people know the deal, that it's safe and okay, and then spent the rest of his 2 minutes saying that President Trump had done nothing to prevent the pandemic. This by the guy who had called the president xenophobe for closing the borders with China almost immediately, right? Oh, it's coffee to one of my fans, and I'm not drunk, and I'm not high, and I feel quite balanced today. Alright, let's do a little expose on dark winter, shall we? Okay, so it was a 2001 war game study that was put on by the Center for Strategic International Studies, Johns Hopkins Center for Civilian Biodefense Studies, the Answer Institute for Homeland Security, and the Oklahoma City National Memorial Institute for the Prevention of Terrorism. And this potential event takes place in Oklahoma City as they wargame it. And it was to examine the national security, intergovernmental, and information challenges of a biological attack on the American homeland in 2001. It was called Operation Dark Winter. Once again, Biden mentioned this in the last debate, and several other prominent libtards have mentioned it since. So it's worth taking a little peek at what exactly it means. So, June 22nd, 23rd, 2001, these groups created a senior-level war game that simulated a smallpox attack on the U.S. known as the Dark Winter. It was a mock version of a widespread smallpox attack. Okay, so on these dates, senior policy makers and U.S. officials meet for the simulation Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland. It was a tabletop exercise. Decision makers were presented with a fictional scenario and asked to react to the facts and context of that scenario, establish strategies, and make policy decisions. To the extent possible, the decisions were made, incorporated into the evolving exercises so that the decisions affected the evolution and outcomes of the scenario. Okay, so the purpose Okay, so I'm sorry. Ultimately, the war game ended without any clear resolution and enormous civilian fatalities. Okay, so what was the purpose of Operation Dark Winter? Well, it sounds like we were just told the purpose, but that was from the viewpoint of the people who were wargaming it. Okay? The Dark Winter exercise ended on the second day of the simulation after 3 long sessions and purposely without resolution. But then the exercise was not to predict the future, but to dramatize the issues faced by the federal government during a national health crisis. In this, it masterfully succeeded, showing what begins as a small, localized disease outbreak, in this case smallpox in Oklahoma City, and then in 2 other densely populated areas, how it can quickly become a crisis that envelops an entire nation and the world. This is all sounding eerily familiar, is it not? State borders became choke points, crowded with those trying to flee the diseases. Canada and Mexico closed their border to the United States, and foreign nations restricted the travel of American citizens. Now remember, this was 2001. Here we are, 19 years later, and it's playing out. Okay? Ultimately, the purpose of the war game was to highlight the vulnerabilities of our healthcare system and policies that are put in a worst-case scenario. But, plausible scenario. So, nonetheless, Operation Dark Winter went on to shape 10 years of a biological preparedness policy. What were the findings? There were 5 key findings released by the Center of Health Security relating to our country's ability to handle an attack that might compromise our security and our healthcare system. An attack on the U.S. with biological weapons could threaten vital national security interests. Massive civilian casualties, breakdown in essential institutions, violation of democratic processes, aka our constitutional rights, civil disorder, loss of confidence in government, and reduced U.S. strategic flexibility abroad. Current organizational structures and capabilities are not well suited for the management of a biological warfare attack. Major fault lines exist between levels of government, state, federal, local, between government and the private sector, essential, non-essential, and among different institution agencies and within public and private sectors. These disconnects could impede situational awareness and compromise the ability to limit loss of life, suffering, and economic damage. Has that happened? Alright, there is no surge capability in the U.S. healthcare, public health systems, or in big pharma and vaccines. This surge, institutionally limited surge, could result in hospitals being overwhelmed, being inoperable, and it could impede public health agencies' analysis of scope, source, and procedure of an epidemic, their ability to educate and reassure the public, and their capacity to limit casualties and the spread. So, we've seen a lot of disinformation. Comrade Fauci and Birx changing their statement every other day. The CDC and that band, the WHO coming out, changing their statements and a narrative every other day. That is all intentional to promote mass hysteria. And it worked among the weak-minded among us, did it not? Okay. Dealing with the media will be a major, immediate challenge for all levels of government. Information management and communication, i.e. dealing with the press, effectively communications with citizens, maintaining the information flows necessary for command and control will be a critical element. Well, we all know what the fake news has done since March and the start of this pandemic. They have done nothing but spew lies and false stats, ignoring truthful data and stats, just pushing the libtard hysteria, enabling the tyrannical despots in the libtard cesspool, cities and states, to institute their dictatorial edicts upon we the people, trampling our constitutional rights. So, should a contagious bioweapon pathogen be used, containing the spread of the disease will prevent significant ethical, political, cultural, operational, and legal challenges. These findings should have prepared public officials for the vid. But many of the Center for Health Security predictions have proven true. Well, of course, it was designed to be done. This was all in the back pocket of the libtards and the deep staters. Remember, from those long 8 years, 2008, 2016, the stage was being set, the economy was being wrecked, America's security forces were being weakened, our cultural, moral, and ethical society was being degraded and collapsed through the use of racism, bigotry, phobias, hatred for America, all by intent. 2016, they never thought she would lose. 3.5 years, they did all they could to try and get rid of President Trump, all the while slandering us, libeling us, assaulting us, murdering us, all for loving the country and supporting our president. They ran out of options. They were proven to be liars and treasonous piece of shit every step of the way. They had a hole card. The vid. Alright. So, what are we going to do now? Pedo Joe mentioned we're going to have a dark winter. Why would he bring that up? Go to YouTube, Google Joe Biden debate comments dark winter, and up will come a minute and a half video of him bringing it up. The election's in just a few days. You have got to get prepared. Go ahead and Google and YouTube Dark Winter 2001 and read about it. And if you still think even this much of this pandemic wasn't planned, I can't help you. And to be perfectly honest, I don't want to help you. I need you out of the way. So put on your mask and your gloves and go lock yourself in your house and stay there. Like, share, subscribe, comment, hit that notification bell. I'm going to try and get a video out every day before the election to keep everyone getting ready. But for now, JT, signing off.